This week on the TT show, NVIDIA's next-gen GPUs will have next-gen memory. A PlayStation Classic is finally coming to PC. Dune gets an epic game. PC gamers are moving away from 1080p. The Cybertruck's bulletproof body has been put to the test. Solar-powered eye implants are now a thing. NVIDIA getting sued over AI copyright infringements. Samsung is sending Galaxy S24 Ultras into space to take photos. And much, much more. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the TT show. My name is Jack Connor. I'm a hardware editor over at Tweaktown, and today I'm joined by my co-host,
Kosta gaming hardware editor at Tweaktown.
How you going, my friend?
Yeah, pretty good. The heat wave is over. Did you get the heat wave?
Yeah, it's like 40 degrees here for the past 3 days.
Yeah,
I've been waking up. It looks like someone's died in my bed from how much sweat. Like it looks like a cutout of a person.
Yeah, so like what's 40 degrees in Fahrenheit?
Yeah, for the US listeners.
Yeah, so that's 104. Yeah, and it's not even like technically summer either because it's over.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. They're saying that this is going to be a really wet winter, or like we're going to get lots of rain this year.
Yeah.
But you know, they also said that it was going to be a like record breaking summer, and it's like, well, it rained for like most of it, so yeah, I don't know how accurate.
Guys.
Yeah, they need new NASA satellites. We have a jam-packed show as always. Lots of different topics to cover. We got, oh man, I mean, can't wait to get to Samsung sending those 4 S24s into space, because that story has gone mega viral on Tweaktown, and yeah, I'm just so impressed. But that's probably the most impressive marketing campaign that I've seen for a phone. But that's just a little. Do you want to go straight into it?
Yeah,
all right.
I mean,
okay. I mean, it is our show, isn't it?
Yeah, I saw the headlines. So yeah, so the Galaxy S24 Ultra is their new flagship.
It is their flagship phone, yes. I don't know how I really even came across this. I do a lot of, like, I mean, I'm a big camera guy. I like reading on cameras, lenses, and stuff like that. And phones, as you've probably, as the listeners have probably been understanding from the show. But I came across this, and I actually thought it was fake news when I first saw it. I'm like, there's no way they did this. So what Samsung decided to do is strap 4 Galaxy S24 Ultras onto stratospheric balloons, which are typically used, and it's funny that we're actually going straight into this because they're typically used for weather observation, to record like weather patterns, and also, I mean, some science experiments of like testing atmospheric density at different levels of altitude. That is another common thing. They're quite cheap as well, which is good because it's essentially just like a balloon. Then they just send it up and record the data. It flicks it back down to Earth. So Samsung saw this and went, okay, let's showcase how good our cameras are by attaching 4 of our flagship phones onto these stratospheric balloons, releasing them from different locations around the world, and then capturing different, I suppose, locations of the atmosphere and Earth's surface. So they captured more than 150 images. I wasn't going to include all of them in the article, but for those that want further reading, as always, the links are down in the description below. You'll find my story on it and then a link to the source.
Yep.
Samsung talked to Petapixel and explained what they did. So the stratospheric balloons are filled with hydrogen. They reached a height of more than 120,000 feet, which is, just for comparison, a commercial airplane usually is anywhere between 31,000 and 42,000. So this is, I mean, it's not in space yet because you got to pass the Kármán line, which is. But
it's essentially like, I mean, it looks like space.
Yeah, like
high enough that you're basically.
You're there.
Is that the height that Tom Cruise
Tom Cruise jump from?
jump from? Is that it?
I know it is actually
Probably.
Tom Cruise. No, it's the Red Bull dude. Do you remember that?
Well, didn't Tom Cruise do it for like Mission Impossible?
Yeah, but I think the Red Bull one was real.
Tom Cruise does his own stunts, man. Like he's like
yeah, that little hobbit man. I
like
love
the
him.
advanced human doing all these crazy things.
Yeah, Red Bull jump from space. I'm pretty sure he jumped from the stratosphere.
That's nuts.
Yeah, he literally jumped from the stratosphere. 39 kilometers. We'll do that in feet for the US. 39 kilometers to feet.
To feet. What a
Yeah, 127,000 foot jump. And for those that remember, he actually passed out going like because he started to tumble. And you know, if you've watched any space movie where they're starting to tumble, G-forces happen.
G-forces, yeah.
And blood drains from the brain, and yeah, night. But he survived. So, and so did these. I'm guessing these phones did, but I mean, we got the images. So, so the 4 balloons were released from 4 different locations in the United States: Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Sierra Nevada mountains, and the Grand Canyon. As a correction, not different. Yeah, not from different locations around the world, around the US. So the decision to launch from various locations was to, quote, capture a diversity of landscapes that would truly put the S24's capabilities to the test. Yep. And the photos, they're on screen now. Unfortunately for the audio listeners, we can't really... we can't do much for you here, but head over to the YouTube and you can see these incredible photos. I think if you had a blind test... with someone that isn't probably like adept in satellite imagery or whatever, you could get away with saying that these were captured from a satellite. What do you think?
I think so. Like it's, yeah, I mean, they look really cool, and it's a good marketing thing because, you know, for people that want to take photos of their food,
yeah,
because they're like, oh,
or the people that are. Or the people that are going up with like Richard Branson on like Virgin Galactic.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you got to have a Samsung S24 Ultra if you want to take photos of your house from here. No, they're really impressive. Like the Grand Canyon shots are awesome. Like you can, I mean, they're not extremely detailed, but they're detailed enough for it to be like, wow, that's like, this is from a phone sensor. The camera sensor on the S24 Ultra is like approximately the size of your thumb. And like, if you know anything about cameras, like full frame DSLR cameras, like the one that I'm using to record now, yeah, they're much larger. They're approximately the size of a GPU. Like they're
like
huge
the sensors and stuff like that.
Yeah, but this is all coming from something that's like probably as big as your thumbnail.
It's impressive, like how far phone cameras have come.
Yeah, just to condense all of that high resolution imagery into this tiny sensor. I mean, we are getting more cameras. I think if we get like, look at the S24, we've got 3 cameras. I mean, you jump between like telephoto, was it telephotic lens?
Yeah, telephoto lens.
Yeah, telephoto lens and ultra wide lens. But like, if we start adding more lenses on the back of it, this is just getting out of hand. Like, I don't want 8 lenses on my camera, on my phone. Sorry,
like alien.
Yeah. So I think we've hit the cap. Because like 5, it's gonna look.
I think they've kind of like hit a peak now in terms of like just everyday use. Like if you want, you know, just photos of just day-to-day things of like normal digital photo stuff. Like it caters for everything. Like, because, you know, the low light stuff, all the like the only thing they can do now, I think, apart from like having like the top of line cameras in the top of line phones filter their way down to the cheaper, more affordable ones, is essentially just software stuff like, you know, Google's Magic Pixel and all the you know, how they can emulate depth of field now.
Yes,
software, and it looks looks almost identical to how you do it with a camera and stuff. Yeah.
Well, what is interesting that I find is Samsung's phones typically are pushing the envelope in terms of mobile camera capabilities through hardware. Like they're just, you know, ramming megapixels in there and zooms and stuff like that. While Apple and, as you were saying, Google, they concentrate more on the software side. So like for the
experience,
for the longest time, they've been using 12 megapixels but their software capabilities of, like, you know how you're saying, tweaking the low light or having, I think some of the newest Google phones, like you can actually just replace stuff in the background with other things, or like if someone wasn't blinking, like blinked during a photo, you can just like hover over them and like fix it. Now like that kind of like raises the question of like, well, what is a photo then? Like if you're
but at the end of the day, like that's where it's headed. Like if you, for people, for I guess like because the whole thing is for like an everyday person to be able to point and shoot and for it to look somewhat good, professional, right, or good. So like and most people don't or have no reason to have a detailed understanding of how lenses and light and all that sort of stuff and focus, and focal points and foreground, you know, like perspective. Like there's no reason for everybody to know exactly how all that works and how that works on a lens basis. So if you have like a, you know, that's why like, you know, Instagram filters like that blew up, because it's just like, oh, hey, it looks a specific way because this filter just changes the lighting. And AI is going to be the same. It's going to be, you know, whether it takes, you know, like the motion photos where it has all these reference things and it's like, okay, this is the best version of you from a second ago, the best version of this person not blinking, and then just automatically just creates the best photo based on like, you know, like a second of recording or whatever it is.
Yeah. I can't remember what that feature is called, but I do know exactly what you're talking about. I think the main limitation right now with mobile phones, and it goes back to what I was saying with like the thumb size sensor that is inside of these devices, is low light photography. It's like most of like if you compare any of the mobile devices to, you know, DSLRs or something like that, it is the DSLRs win in low light purely because the sensor is this big compared to this big. So like whatever light that is coming in is now hitting something that is way smaller than something that is much, much larger. But
and that comes down to like digital has always had a problem. You know, like compact digital cameras as well as, you know, which is what is in a phone, right? Like it's not like a full telephoto lens strapped to the back of your phone. But it's like they always have a problem with low light because it just introduces so much like noise and
noise. And that's where the software comes in, and iPhone and Google Pixel arguably are better for, like, if you would do side-by-side comparisons. I've seen blind tests on Twitter and other platforms of like, you know, they'll take a photo of the same thing with all three different devices, and both iPhone and Google Pixel, iPhone typically wins. Samsung is last. So it's like, it shows that no, hardware isn't exactly everything. It's when it comes to photography. But yeah, I thought that was a really cool story. Probably some of the most impressive marketing that I've seen for a mobile phone camera. Like that's I think that was really cool. But we'll move on. What did you have next on the menu?
This is a fun one.
Let's do it.
Jump straight into some PC gaming stuff.
Let's do it.
So real-time ray tracing, the holy grail of rendering, has been around for a while now, but it's obviously still nowhere near ready for, like, you know, every game to be like Cyberpunk path traced and stuff like that, because you just need insane levels of hardware as well as DLSS as well as frame generation just to get the most extreme examples of ray tracing to run with dedicated, you know, ray tracing hardware. So there's there's Linux, and there's this 3D graphics library that recently added support for like older GPUs to be able to run ray tracing for certain games. And so what happened is that they just ported that over to CPU drivers. So it's basically like real-time ray tracing in a lot of instances like uses DirectX 12, which uses hardware, GPU hardware specifically in order to work. It's just not going to work without it, right? And Vulkan is a different API. That's what Doom runs on, and it's a more it's an open source, so it's on Linux, it's on Windows. So Vulkan. So like porting that over to like a CPU. So basically, what's happened is that somebody's taken a CPU, and it's a mainstream CPU apparently, like just a off-the-shelf mid-range Ryzen CPU, and ported the API or however ray tracing works to be able to run off the CPU, and firing up Quake 2 RTX at 1080p.
God.
Quake 2 RTX was like one of the first like tech demos that NVIDIA did. It was like full ray traced Quake 2, but it didn't have like this is like before like DLSS was like a big thing and stuff. But it was impressive because it took like an ancient game and gave it full ray traced lighting. So anyway, like running off the CPU, the on-screen overlay says like it's 1 FPS with a frame time of like 1600 milliseconds.
Oh my God.
And then somebody like queried the engineer who got it running, and it was mainly just a case of because somebody requested it, so they ported the code that they developed over. And Konstantin, he posted a screenshot and said, "Don't ask about performance." And then somebody asked about performance, and then he went on to say that like even like the on-screen overlay of like 1 FPS isn't that accurate because it's running so slow that like even like Afterburner or whatever can't really register what's happening. And turns out that it at worst it's like 15 minutes to render one frame.
Oh my God.
So like we know that ray tracing is like super intensive on like a GPU.
Yeah.
And like when it first came out, like unless you had like an RTX GPU with the RT cores, like you remember like people were trying to run Quake 2 RTX on like a 1080 or like packing it to run on like a 10 series GPU.
Yeah.
And like it was just like, like it was basically the same thing. It was like 2 FPS versus like 20 or whatever.
My God. So this really demonstrates the difference between having dedicated hardware for something versus not. Yeah.
Basically. It's more like and I put in the headline that CPU real-time ray tracing is here, but it's not really.
I mean, it is here, but
it's technically
no one's going to want to use it. Yeah.
What's kind of cool is that like video cards, who also reported on it, actually brought up something that I hadn't seen or completely forgot about. But Intel actually there's an old Quake game called Enemy Territory Quake Wars, and like back in 2008, and this is like 10 years before the GeForce RTX 2080 arrived and NVIDIA brought ray tracing. They did like a demo of like a ray traced Quake Wars running at 30 FPS at 720p on one of their CPUs, which is in the article. If you go to the show notes, it's kind of cool.
Wait, hold on. So they got more frames back then? Oh, it's 720p. Sorry, not 1080p.
Yeah, and so the Quake 2 RTX is fully path traced, so it's like it is like more advanced ray tracing.
Yeah,
like there are like examples of like people have gotten ray tracing running on an N64, like very basic.
God, was it on fire?
No.
It would have been cooking. You could have cooked your breakfast on that thing. Imagine that.
But that was like running at like 240p or something like that. Super low resolution.
Yeah. No, that is awesome though. I mean, that really does show the difference, like I just said earlier. Like if you have dedicated hardware for something, and you can build your software around that hardware spec, you can get much, much, much more performance out of whatever you're trying to achieve versus having a CPU or another piece of hardware that is used for multiple different things. try and run it. So that's, I mean, it does demonstrate really in some fashion how far ray tracing has come in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, so like Quake 2 RTX, because it's all like about like the amount of like light rays that they can actually calculate, and you know, like the sun is like shooting out infinite light rays essentially, or like, you know, a figure that you can't really count. So like, you know, well, in a game, like, you know, if the light source is the sun and it's got ray tracing, then they're going to, you know, it might be like 8 rays, and then they might calculate 6 bounces of the light, you know, bouncing off different surfaces to calculate the blah, blah, blah. And it's all just like intense maths that's, you know, every frame has to calculate that over and over, which is why it's so taxing. And but like, you know, like the latest version of like Cyberpunk or Portal with RTX, like, you know, which is what they did to Quake 2, but 4 years or later or whatever. But that's like, you know, like infinitely more complex than Quake 2's ray tracing. It does like way more light bounces, and it is more impressive. But it requires DLSS and frame generation to run, and like a 4080 at a minimum. To actually get it playable, which is, you know, it's basically showed that, like, you know, we're still a couple of generations away from it being fully mainstream.
I think it'll be the adoption, and I'm not saying that the next generation consoles will even be able to do this, but I feel like it'll become mainstream adopted once the GPUs trickle down, NVIDIA's GPUs trickle down into like everyday gamers' hands, like mid-range and low-range PC gamers, but also console. Like when consoles have the option for enabling not every game, but like big game releases, they have the option of like kind of like how they've got like performance and quality mode right now. If they have an additional ray tracing mode, and most gamers, I believe, that are playing like fast paced, like Call of Duty, Fortnite,
like games where it's not.
They won't put that on because they'll want the frames. But if I'm playing like the next Witcher or something like that, I can imagine me sitting down on the console, or like God of War or something like that. I don't need like,
you don't need like 200 FPS, because like a competitive title, you want the maximum. Whereas like, you know, if you can run like Alan Wake 2, Cyberpunk, or Spider-Man with ray tracing, like if you can run those games at like 60 FPS with DLSS or whatever and ray tracing, then that's perfect, I think.
Like, I don't think
you need more than 60 for like those sort of like cinematic games. Like having it run at like 100 or 200, sure. Like in the perfect world, why not?
You'll take it if you can get it.
You gotta be realistic.
But if I have the option, like say it might not be the next generation consoles, but the console generation after that, if they're talking about ray tracing implementation, and let's say they're 120 FPS 4K consoles, because that'll be, I mean, how many years away would that be?
That's like a decade.
So we should be there by then, probably more. I would sacrifice 120 FPS for 60 plus ray tracing. Give me the option. I love that. I think that'd be perfect. That's a really cool story. I like that. I just like hardware cooking, really. Don't you just love to just see hardware?
We're just like struggling.
That thing is on fire. It's like a nuclear reactor right now.
And I'm like 1 FPS or like stuttering. Like it's funny, like because it happens sometimes with like, because like the Cyberpunk benchmark, which I run with ray tracing, is using the ray tracing ultra mode. But if you run it at like 4K, because you got to run it native before you run it with DLSS. So even if you run it that native 4K on, let's say like a 4070 or even like a mid-range GPU, like at 4K native RT Ultra, like it struggles. Like it's 10 FPS or just under that. And it's like a slideshow when it's running the benchmark. You're like, is this thing even going to finish?
And all I want to do is push it more as well. I'm like, I don't think this is all. I think it can take more. Let's put more.
At 8K.
Yeah, just to see it die. No, I think we're just performance freaks, but you know, let's move on.
talk about a couple of cool game things because we're on the game topic.
Let's do it.
In the intro, we teased that a PlayStation Classic is finally coming to PC. This is one, if you're aware of it, it's actually like a PS4 game. And as soon as Sony started releasing games on PC like Horizon and God of War, people have been wanting to see Ghost of Tsushima.
Yes.
It's a set in feudal Japan, and it's it's kind of like Assassin's Creed in feudal Japan, but that's like a broad generalization. But like that's essentially kind of how it is. It's like you got an open world, you've got all these you got stealth and action combat, but you got a really cinematic story. It's actually one of the best PS4 games, I would say. Like personally, I think it's a pretty awesome game. The fact that it's coming to PC is actually really cool. So this has been something that people have been wanting for ages. This has appeared on, I think, the NVIDIA leak years ago. This is something that people have been expecting. So it's finally coming out in May, and it's going to support basically a whole bunch of things. So the good news is that Nixes, which is a studio that PlayStation or Sony bought a few years ago, they're doing the port, and they're kind of like masters of like PC ports. They back in the days they were porting like the most recent Tomb Raider games, which people have been using for benchmarks for years just because of how stable the ports are in terms of like frame time. So they're like known for like good PC ports, and when Sony bought them a few years ago, they basically signaled that okay, that's going to be their studio to bring their PlayStation games, or like a big chunk of them, or to help developers bring the games across. So this version of the game is going to be the director's cut, which includes all the bonus content and whatever additional modes and stuff that they released over the years for PlayStation. So it's like a complete edition as expected. It's going to support like full ultra wide, including 48:9, whatever that.
Wow. Wait.
Up to triple monitor support.
Wait, hold on. In Anthony's article here, it says ultra-wide monitors like the game was fully supported for, offering support for 21:9, 32:9, and even 49:9 aspect ratios.
That's 48:9, I think.
Yeah, I think that's an error, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Which is basically like that massive Samsung that you saw. So it'll support it because you know, like games actually have to support those super ultra wide aspect ratios, and it's going to launch with DLSS 3, FSR 3, and Intel's XeSS. So you'll have access to all the performance enhancing AI techniques.
This is a game that I really wanted to play.
Yeah, really, and this will have PS5 DualSense controller support. So most people game on PCs with an Xbox controller just because, the Windows. And it's always been compatible. Like, since the 360 days, it's been like the best controller. Yeah. But there is like native DualSense controller support, which is the PS5 controller, which is a nice controller. And that has like, the haptics and the 3D vibration and like, like the actual triggers, like, like if you're playing Horizon, the upcoming Horizon game, which is going to support on PC, like if you use your bow, like you feel the tension of the string on the trigger as you
like pushes back or something like that.
Yeah, you get that resistance, and if you're doing something else, then like it adapts.
Yeah.
And so they're starting to bring that across to their PC games. So I guess if you're super into it, then it might be worth getting one of those controllers. It'll work just as fine with an Xbox controller.
I probably won't buy a PS5 controller for it, but I will definitely be purchasing this game because I love Mongolian history. And this is
set in Japan.
Yeah, but this is like, I'm pretty sure this is set
during the
Mongolian invasion. I can't remember if it's right at the start or right at the end.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like...
Isn't it 1200s?
Yeah.
It's the 1200s, right?
I'm
pretty sure it is. Like that's because I looked into it, and when the game came out, and I was like, man, this looks cool. Like you're like a samurai killing a bunch of
Yeah, it's really cool. Like it's got a really
Genghis
good story
Khan
and
followers.
really cinematic, yeah.
But yeah, I'm super excited about that, and it's really cool to see that it's releasing with all of the latest NVIDIA DLSS and FSR. Like that's great.
And it's going to have like advanced, like more advanced like visuals. You know, like high resolution textures and bigger draw distances. So
this sounds like a good
port. It's a few
port.
years old. It's going to be like a real it's going to be pretty big, I think. But like especially if you love that sort of setting, because there's like you can play it in with English dub, which is actually like like the authentic actors like doing it in English or but then you can play it with Japanese with English subtitles. And there's like various like little like visual modes you can play it in. There's like a black and white mode, so you can play it like it's an old school samurai film from the 50s or 60s. There's all these like different visual filters and stuff like that to make it more cinematic.
Yeah, this sounds like a very impressive port.
Yeah, so like when I said like with the audio like English or Japanese, like it actually changes the lip syncing as well. So it's not like just a dub.
Oh, okay. So it's not going to be out of sync if you
it's proper. Like if you play it in Japanese, like they'll always be speaking and you'll have your subtitles, but it won't be and then when you play in English, their lips it'll be in English. Yeah.
I'm going to play it in English. I'm going to play it in English. But I suppose if you want like a authentic experience, I mean, that option is there for you. That's really good. No, I'm glad. Good on the developers for doing this. This is good props. We always love to see as PC gamers a console game coming over to PC that doesn't like either rule out a certain percentage of PC gamers because you need like a crazy graphics card to run it for whatever reason, or it just sucks upon release. So hopefully they can get this over here with all of the things that they've promised.
Issues. Yep. A couple of other games that I think are worth highlighting. There was another one announced that ties in perfectly with the biggest movie at the moment, which is Dune Part 2.
Yes.
And I haven't seen it yet, but like Dune
Neither have I.
is one of my favorite movies of the past decade. I absolutely love it as a sci-fi epic.
So do I, and I think it might be the next, and this is just purely movie thing,
Lord of the Rings.
It might be in contention for like the greatest trilogy. However, the director,
Dune Messiah.
Dune director. Who directed? Is it David Villeneuve? He is one of the best in the game right now. Like, look at his
filmography.
Yeah, it is so impressive, the movies that he's done, like Blade Runner 2049, Prisoner. He said that he doesn't want to do the third one.
Yeah,
he doesn't want to do the third one, and I'm like,
he's working on a script for the next one. It's just depending on where they can do it, because
if he doesn't direct it,
adapts the first book, or the first, and then the next one will have to adapt Dune Messiah, which gets a little crazy in terms of the story. So I think they're adapting it now.
Yeah, but if he doesn't direct it, that's like...
it feels bad. It's kind of like if Peter Jackson pulled out of like Return of the King.
Yeah. No, I think if you're doing a trilogy, you're painting a canvas, and like, part one is like you've done like the background or whatever. Part two is like you've done all of the impressive parts of like, usually part one is like establishing the story. Part two is... you're watching your main protagonist develop and like reach almost like the pinnacle of their character development. And part three is a battle. Is always going to be a battle. It's like there's a battle for the completion of the arc of the character, whether that is into tragedy or into success. So if you're doing that canvas thing and he doesn't come in to finish off the painting, and some other bloke just arrives, like, it's gonna feel the movie's tone. It's gonna feel different. So if he doesn't do that, I'm gonna be pretty upset, because I haven't had a trilogy in so long. Like, this is arguably, if this comes to fruition and he does complete all 3 of them, even though it might be killing him, it could be the best sci-fi trilogy of all time, taking out, in my personal opinion, the original Star Wars movies.
In terms of like
name a better trilogy.
Consistent filmmaking, yeah. Because like the original Star Wars trilogy is, you know, like by the 3rd one, Return of the Jedi, gets a little bit not as good as the first 2 sort of thing, and they're
that's true.
But then again, like the original Star Wars is so iconic and so influential that it's hard to view it as just a film anymore. It's like, well, it's basically history. It's almost like Lord of the Rings. Like I think it'll hit that same level where it's like, okay, this is iconic filmmaking. Like this is like, you know, it's beyond.
I'm very excited. I'm actually going to go see it this week with my girlfriend, and
yeah, I plan to as well because I was going to go last weekend, but had cold/flu, so I was out of action for a few days. But
we should actually go when we see it. We should talk about it on the pod because I want to talk about.
I
want to talk about
the first one so much. I think it's one of the best movies. Yeah.
I actually picked. Oh, sorry. No, you go. Go ahead. I was just going off track again.
No, it's fine. So, Funcom, who made Conan Exiles, and that game's 500,000 expansions. If you know Conan Exiles, it's a survival game set in the Conan universe, based on the books, and it's like a harsh survival game where you know you get to choose your character and you go out and you build and craft and explore and adventure or whatever in the world of Conan. So they announced this a while ago, but now we've actually seen what it looks like and know what it's about. So they're developing a game called Dune Awakening, and it's set in the movie and book universe of Frank Herbert's Dune, and it's set on Arrakis, which is the iconic sand planet, I guess.
Yeah.
Where the spice is and where the giant worms are. And so basically it's a survival, open world survival MMO.
MMO?
Is like, you know, what does that mean? But like, yeah, so basically it's a persistent universe. So kind of where the things that you do and other people do will change the situation of what's happening. And they're taking some liberties with the source material, but there will be like the politics of like, you know, House Harkonnen, all the different treaties and all the different great houses of the Dune universe. You'll be able to side with and do quests for. You'll be able to build bases. You'll be able to craft. You'll be able to ride a sandworm. So it actually looks really cool, and it's running on Unreal Engine 5. You get to fly those flying mosquito wasp thing, whatever.
Oh yeah.
From the movie, and and so like there'll be like epic battles and all sorts of crazy stuff, and it looks really good. So it's running on Unreal Engine 5, which is the latest Unreal Engine from Epic that most modern games are starting to use now. So it's got like really, really impressive visuals, and it's going to hit early access on PC first, but it's in development for PS5 and Xbox Series X and S. There's no release date, but yet there is an upcoming closed beta that you can sign up for. And yeah, the trailer makes it look really, really cool. This could be, I think like with these type of games, these sort of like survival MMO type games, like you find one that clicks with you. You know, people that love fantasy kind of like easily became fans of World of Warcraft, right? Or,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you love that sort of style, like if you like, even if it's not a multiplayer game, let's say it's just like an RPG. Like if you like Lord of the Rings, you'd be like, okay, I love Skyrim. But if you love,
you like swords and sandals.
If you like, you know, sci-fi, you might gravitate towards Fallout. Like you like Fallout, you're not really a huge fan of Elder Scrolls, and this is like the same thing. So the sci-fi setting is definitely, I think, more appealing for me.
This, I completely agree with that, but this also makes me really nervous because Dune is such a good story that I almost wanted it to be like a God of War kind of experience, because every time I hear some company is building a massive MMO survival thing. I'm like, and then they show off this trailer. Here's what it can do. It never once
lives up to that. Yeah.
Like Guild Wars 2 was something that I played the crap out of. And then we got all the way to the end, me and my mates, and there was nothing there. And then afterwards, like 6 months later, they're like, oh, there's content here now. And we're like, we don't want to do that. We're over the game now. So MMOs, they rise and then they fall. Like that's just unfortunate existence of that type of game.
I guess like the trepidation, it makes sense because Funcom's Conan Exiles, right? When that first came out, that was like it made headlines because it was one of the first games to have like a dong slider, like, because cause the Conan world is like whatever, so like you can increase the size of your genitals and
how much is this game? How much is it?
The character creator. And like if you do like a female one, you do like the boob slider.
And, send me a link. Send me a link right physics.
Now. Yeah. It was funny because it's like that's the universe, right? Like you look at the fantasy art from that universe, it's all like naked barbarians or whatever. That's like the setting. But when that game launched, it was kind of buggy. It came to like Xbox as well, and it was like when it was in early access for ages or whatever the case was, or even if it wasn't, it was just like it was kind of like buggy. But then they've released like so many expansions, and that game has become like its own thing where this has every chance to follow that same thing, but there's also a good chance that at launch it's just not going to be everything won't be there, or it might be a little bit rough around the edges. But the trailer looks really good, I think also the Dune universe and the story of especially the harshness of Arrakis does call for it to be a survival game. Like the whole the whole movie and the whole context is that Arrakis is this really rough planet that the Fremen can only live on because they've got the sweatsuits and it's just too hot.
It's too hot. So I can see why they went survival with it, because in the movie you have to, and I'm guessing in the book as well, you have to survive. You have to go about living on Arrakis in a certain way, but to make it also an MMO is, I feel like, oh man, I can't even name one MMO game that has come out that is gone, okay, here's exactly what we're going to do, and they always over promise and under deliver. And this, I've wished they did instead, when I heard about, because I haven't seen the trailer or read this article on it either, but just to hear it's an MMO and a survival game, it makes me go, I pray that they aren't going to do too many things at once. I would when I heard about the Doom game, I was like, I want a Last of Us contained story experience. You can still put all the survival elements within there, but start off with something like Chef's Kiss. Nice. Give me 40 hours on Arrakis of heart-wrenching story and survival. That's what I wanted out.
But it's kind of like Star Wars, right? So that's what people are learning now about Dune, is that the universe is so rich in terms of possibility. Obviously it has its own specific story setting and parameters where all that exists, but like Star Wars, you could adapt Dune to be an action adventure game or most type of games.
I just can't think you can do it. You can't do it MMO first that fails and then do a contained story, because then we laugh at you as gamers. We're like, oh, you did another swing and a miss. But I think if you go contained story and then go MMO, people are like, yeah, that's cool, because you've sold us on the world with this nice little cutout of say take the Lord of the Rings for example. That is a tiny story in Tolkien's Legendarium. That is a very contained, it's the only contained story really besides The Hobbit, surely you can include that, but I think that's how you sell massive universes, because I don't want, and this is another way that these MMOs fail, is that they make the world too damn big and then everything feels hollow. Like you would just like say Starfield, for example, you're running for like how long? Like, I don't know, an hour or whatever, and nothing appears on like moons or whatever. And they say, as the developers, they go, well, these are desolate planets. It's like, well, what gamer wants to run around on a planet that has nothing on it?
Well, that's like, yeah. So like a big part of Arrakis is that it's like so harsh that you wouldn't want to live on it. So like then like the challenge of the game is that it also has to hook you for you wanting to actually spend time on there, and which means that you're going to have to gamify it. And they've even said like, you know, it's going to have the the still suits, sandworms and things like that. But like in the movie and in the books, you know, they have that sand walking thing where like you have to walk a certain way on the sand so you don't attract sandworms.
Yeah, but imagine doing that for 4 hours.
Yeah, so like they said that, well, that's not in the game because that's just not going to be fun if you're just having to like, creep around, like, you know what I mean? So like they know at least that they're making concessions. They know that it's a game, so
yeah,
part of it that has to be.
But like, say the movie, right? And I haven't read the book. Like, there's nothing in the desert besides sandworms. So I hope it doesn't. I hope they don't release this massive. Besides the Fremen, I hope they don't release this massive world where, like, you know, for me to get to one Fremen tribe to another, I've got to run, or
they're taking liberties. But there's also going to be like, you know, like you would be able to explore, and there'll be like ruins or whatever. You can go scavenging, like, you know, like craft or whatever, scavenge for materials. You'll be able to go harvest spice.
I hope so.
You'll be able to build your own bases and stuff like that. So that side of it is there for like fans that just want the survival side. It's just like the how it's all going to tie with, like, because MMO like also means that there's going to be some element of story or like questing or things like that. So like that side of it is the question mark.
I think it'll be similar to kind of like, say, Hogwarts Legacy, where at the start of the game you go Gryffindor, or you go, like, you choose your house, and then whatever quests and
I don't think they might lock it that way. Maybe maybe you have an option to like.
Well, that wouldn't be an MMO like then if you get assigned. Like, you want to choose. Like in World of Warcraft, you either go, what is it? Oh my god, I can't believe I've forgotten it.
Yeah, no. Human, orc, elf, night elf.
No. Like, you choose your faction, though.
Yeah, Horde or Alliance.
Yeah, Horde or Alliance, yeah. So I think they'll do something like that where you can choose your house, and then whatever crafting or like building that you do and achievement goes towards your global house ranking. Yeah, I don't know. I have many concerns about. I mean, I was an MMO guy, and then I just got shat all over by, you know, overpromise and underdeliver titles, and I really love Dune as well. So I hope that they execute on this with grace, not being like, oh, here's the game that we're going to get because it's the biggest movie at the moment. Here's this incredible new game, and then all the fans of the movie we'll get all of them. We'll get them all to play it, and then when it comes out, like, it smells bad. Yeah. Like, that is just, how many times can we take that as gamers, like, before you end up as cynical as I am about MMOs in particular. This one hurts. So I really do hope that it is good, but I have my concerns with the survival and MMO aspects.
And like, it's daunting as well, because it's like, well, how big is this going to be? But if you're daunted by that, so there's one final game I want to highlight. This is one that there was an Xbox showcase a while ago, and you picked this one game out because they showed a brief trailer of it as like, well, that looks good. What is this? It's called No Rest for the Wicked. There's like an extended video now. If you look at the video and skip to about, I guess, the
I like that art
4
style.
4 minute 30 mark. Like, just the art style of this game is like next level. So this indie studio called Moon Studios. They made the Ori games.
Oh
Ori and
yeah,
the Will
yeah,
of the Wisp.
yeah. The
They're
little
just-
blue orb.
That's just this beautiful game, like with the
Yeah.
worlds and stuff. So this game is like if you look at the gameplay,
Wow.
like at the 4-minute 45 sort of like mark.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, it's just absolutely beautiful, and it's like a dynamic world, and it's basically they're making their version of a Diablo action RPG. So it's going to have precision-based combat. So I guess a bit more like Hades or something like that, where it's a lot of skill in terms of timing and potentially dodging and stuff like that. But it's all like loot-based, and it's going to be co-op online
Yeah.
as well. But it's a handcrafted world, so it's not procedurally generated dungeons or anything like that. It's a finite world, and it's like an action RPG, story
I
driven.
love that.
Full character customization and stuff like that.
It-
Like plenty of loot that'll define how your character evolves and progresses. So it is a action RPG, but like the actual art style of it is incredible.
I love it. It almost looks Lovecraftian.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, there's like a
Like it looks horror,
yeah, there
but
is. So, yeah, so like
H.P.
actual-
Lovecraft's got like a certain way that like those monsters look, and
Yeah, this has like the story is kind of like medieval
oh wow, the
cult
combat looks cool
style
as
of-
well.
based. Yeah,
And it doesn't look, I mean, too hack and slashy where you're just like pummeling
That's right,
through
yeah.
millions and millions and millions of just mobs. It's
looks like a bespoke type of action RPG, and like because like their previous game Ori, they did 2 of them, but the second one was like a platformer that was kind of like Metroid-ish in terms of like, you know, a world that evolves and expands based on your abilities and stuff like that. But that was like a brilliant looking game. And
yeah.
it was a great game too. Like it won awards. So
That
there
was
is,
the
like, high
blue
hopes.
orb, right?
Yeah, you're
Ori?
kind of like a little. You're like a little
Like an ember
spectral like a
almost.
spirit. Yeah, you're like a
Yeah.
little spirit.
I didn't play it. This does look cool. I love that art. So that was the first thing I said when I saw it. I was like, damn, this looks dark.
Yeah, they're like their art style. Their art directors are incredible. Yeah,
And to
So,
have it
like,
not
this-
procedurally generated as well, that I
Yeah, so-
love that. That's
yeah. So it's a
that's
small
time
team.
and
Like,
care.
like this could be like a game that we could play for like, let's say like 10 hours or whatever it is, and like
Mm.
go through the whole story, or maybe double that maximum, whatever it is.
Mm.
You go through it, develop your characters, the world looks incredible, and you have fun with it. Either you play it solo, co-op, or whatever,
Mm.
and then that's it, sort of thing. Like there's no need for it. It's not like it's the complete opposite of an MMO or a live service game
Yeah.
where it's constantly, where it's like, well, here's your season 1 roadmap and expansion and things like that. But this looks cool. Like check out like the boss battle, like the 12-minute 20 mark.
Set in I'm just reading some of your article here. Set in the medieval world overrun by the pestilence with religion. Pestilence. I love that. It aims to reinvent the genre. I think that is, I mean, it's a good thing
Yeah.
to aspire to. What was your timestamp again? Sorry.
Like the 12-minute
12-minute.
12-minute mark. Yeah, about the 12-minute mark where it just starts like this boss battle, like in the rain. So like the world is has dynamic weather. So like this location could be dusk, sunset during the day, or like this for this boss battle, like just a rainy, stormy night. And you can see
Wow.
like the animation of like on the boss, like the environmental destruction, and
This is
you feel the
Lovecraftian. Look
weight.
at that thing.
yeah, like you'd like the weight of each hit and stuff like that. So like they're nailing the stuff in the genre that you have to nail, which is that when you hit something, or when something hits you, or when it hits the environment, you have to feel the impact of it. Otherwise, it's just fluff.
That's so good.
So this looks really, really, really cool, and it's coming to early access on PC first,
Mm.
and obviously it's going to come to PlayStation and Xbox as well. It's actually the early access release is next month, April 19. I'm
Oh.
tempted to get it just for that, but as an early access release, like they released a roadmap and like multiplayer is not coming until like the first major update, or like it may only have like X amount. It seems like they might be going like the Hades route, which is like they need community feedback to kind of like fine tune and tweak the elements. So maybe if you can hold out, like this is something to like wait until it's actually 1.0.
Well, why don't we do this?
I didn't play Hades until it hit 1.0.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we contact the developers, say that we'll play it, we'll release our thoughts on the podcast for both the listeners and the developers.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah, we can swing that.
And
I'm willing to give it a go because it looks so good.
It does. I honestly just want to play it because of the combat looks slick and
the art style.
And the art style looks beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, that's the word to describe it. Is that like, even though there's that menacing Lovecraftian style or that sort of like gothic undertone, it's still gorgeous.
Yeah, no, I'm in. Let's send an email after we do the show.
I think that's one of the like just the best looking games just in development. Like it's like you don't need like, you know, realistic visuals for it to be like the best looking game sort of thing. Like it just like art direction just plays such an important role.
No, 100%. It sets the tone for the world.
Yep.
And
that looks really cool.
Yeah, no, I'm in. Yeah, we'll flick them an email to see if they're interested in doing something, because we can play that for a couple of hours and dive through it and then give our thoughts on improvements and stuff like that. I think that'd be sick. Okay, what would you like to go to next?
I'll do a quick one because we was kind of like mentioned at the top was the next gen memory and the next gen GeForce.
Yes.
So the 50 series, which could be out later this year, could be out early next year. There'll be a flagship 5090 or a 5080, and it's going to be 60 to 70% potentially more powerful than the existing 4090, which is crazy to think about. We discussed that last week. So one of the reasons why it could be super powerful is the fact that it's going to be using next gen memory. So the existing 40 series and the 30 series, they used GDDR6X memory, which has like a higher speed memory. And like memory is becoming super important for like GPUs, especially when you go to a higher resolution. You need to be able to stream data like super quickly to the GPU for rendering. And so essentially the 50 series, which for me kind of like makes me worried that it's going to drive the prices up, or is that it's going to be using next gen GDDR7 memory, which is basically we had GDDR5, then 6, and then so 7 is just going to be like an evolution of that. So like, 16 gig of GDR7 is better than 16 gig of GDR6 because it's faster, right? Yeah. So basically the latest report is that it's going to be using that. And then there was a story today that I'll be updating that's not quite live yet, is that it's like the speed of it will be 28 gigabits per second speed, which is like a 30% or a 33% increase over the 4090 memory speeds. So there was a rumor that it's going to be 50% faster, but it looks like NVIDIA are scaling it back to 33%, which might mean just a way of them keeping temperatures in check or costs down or whatever the case is, because it's like this is brand new stuff. So like there aren't any devices out now with GDDR7 memory. So NVIDIA's 50 series will be using this next gen memory. It could be the very first products to actually use it.
Oh, wow.
Not only in the AI space, but for desktop graphics. So when NVIDIA announce or even showcase whatever the 5080 and 5090 are, they might call this out and say, "Look, hey, this is the world's fastest memory." Like it'll be like a tagline or a selling point for the next gen series. And it could be a reason why like they're able to push some of the performance higher, because we're getting at a point now where it's like, sure, the nodes are shrinking, but GPU sizes are increasing, and there's only so many billions of transistors you can fit on a certain thing, and which is why you've got DLSS and things like that. But like, you know, next gen memory or like improved memory could be a way to find more performance, because like it's not just throw more numbers, a higher number equals more performance anymore. Like they need to find more ways to increase performance.
Yeah.
And so that's not really a earth-shattering headline, but like basically we're getting more and more info. Like this story has changed like 3 or 4 times in the past week. So it seems that NVIDIA is at least in the stages of finalizing the specs for their next-gen GPUs, and that will, in the coming months, we'll start seeing a lot more rumors as to what they're going to be.
So do we have an approximate price on GDDR6 memory?
Well, the memory that NVIDIA uses is a more expensive 6X memory.
Yeah.
That they introduced with the 30 series. Like, I don't know, like the prices of the modules or whatever, but it is more expensive.
Yeah,
so this will be more expensive again.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get like an approximate of like, because if we're offering like 50% more bandwidth for GDDR7, it's like, well, is that going to be 50% more expensive than current?
Potentially, because they also, but they like, it seems that like the bus or like the memory, like, you know, like GPUs have like a 192-bit bus, 256-bit bus, 384. There were rumors that NVIDIA were going to use a 512-bit bus, and that's just basically like, you know, you can have more throughput, basically theoretical throughput in terms of like memory, but the higher you go, the more complex it is and the more expensive it is to produce, which is why like on the lower end, like, you know, GPUs use smaller buses because it's not required, and then the 4090 uses a 384-bit. And the current speculation is that no, they're going to be the same sort of like bus speeds as what we've got now. So like, you know, like a 5070 will be on a 192-bit memory bus, and a 5060 will be on a 128-bit, which to some people might be disappointing because it's like, oh, slow memory again. That's going to be a bottleneck. But the faster DDR7 memory should improve things, like, because they've also, like in the 40 series, they added more cache to which improved performance at lower resolutions, or like the 1% lows, like more consistent performance by having like a bigger cache. So like they're doing stuff with the memory to optimize performance.
Okay. What would you say? Would you say that 512-bit bus at 32 gigabytes per second is something that they would think about? Because I'm just reading this article. It's like 4K 240 FPS gaming will be the targets of these new higher end Blackwell GPUs, which is true because I'm running a 4K 120. I'm currently testing one right now, 4K 240 hertz monitor, and it is glorious. Like, oh my god, it is glorious. 8K 120 FPS gaming, I don't believe anyone is going. Like, I think there might be 4 people in the world that are doing that. I'm being egregious, but that you know what I mean. Like 8K 120 FPS gaming, that's a far cry from 4K 240.
But here's the thing, right? Like, content drives the resolutions that we game at. Like, and by content, I mean like movies and TV, or like whatever like entertainment is what drives it, right? So like, you know, like when HD came out, so 1080p Blu-rays, so then all monitors and all gaming started targeting that, like consoles, and then the TVs are now like 4K, but like content is just being made in 4K.
Yeah,
people aren't really producing 8K because, yeah, like we spoke about it in detail, whereas it's like diminishing returns. You need a super large screen to get the benefit of it. If you're just running a thingo, like what's the point? The pixel density, all this extra.
There's more baggage that comes with 8K 120 than 4K 240.
Yeah, like the amount of pixels you have to render. It's just, for gaming, I think, like it's a buzzword to say 8K gaming. It's like, oh, we're going to be gaming in 8K. And yeah, there will be some games that you can,
Yeah.
but you're not going to be. Who's going to be like? I think like the biggest waste of money would be to buy an 8K TV in 2024.
110%. And I would instead buy a 4K, the highest end OLED TV.
Yeah.
And maybe even get it so it has 120 FPS, 120 hertz or 144 hertz or whatever.
Like the new LG OLEDs.
Yeah, that's what I'd be getting.
4 hertz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'd be getting. So I can plug in my console or even my PC or something like that. And I've got, like, I don't know if I wanted to play God of War on my 4090 with a controller. I bring my PC down to my TV, whack that sucker in, and I'm just capping out the absolute most I can do out of that TV. That's cream of the crop. But I'm not going to do 8K on it. And run the game in like, 80 FPS or like 60 FPS for why?
Yeah, but even then you'll be running DLSS. Like, what's the point? Like, and if you're sitting like from a TV, like this is always like the thing is like, well, if you've got a 65-inch, which is like was huge ages ago, but now is like the normal, right? For like most living rooms, or like if you've got a decent sized living room, like, you know, obviously there's small apartments and stuff like that where it doesn't make sense, but like, you know, if like a traditional, you know, living room, 65 inches is the standard now, but you're usually sitting about 3 meters away, 2 to 3 meters away, 2.5, let's say. But at that distance, for that size screen, the difference between 4K and 8K is barely noticeable. And like where it's like, it's kind of like one of those situations where like 5 people out of 100 will say, yeah, that looks better.
Yeah, and there are people like me and you that are looking for it.
Exactly. But then even if you were to say like, okay, in all seriousness, it looks better, but like, do you think it's worth the performance hit? If it is worth like spending 10 times this amount? Do you think it's worth like, you know, triple the amount of Netflix bandwidth just to stream it at that resolution? Then you'll say, well, no, it's like, it's not like 500 times better, like whatever, you know, like it's not like 10 times better because you need 10 times the bandwidth or 10 times the GPU power to run it. Like, it's just not that.
Even 4K from 144 hertz to 240 hertz is not, it's like not even like...
We just need to get like refresh rates
up.
You need to get like, you know, like 10 years from now, we don't want 8K TVs, we want 4K 600 hertz, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because when you get to 1,000 hertz on these TVs is when you actually go back to the days of like CRTs where you got perfect image clarity. Yep.
Yeah.
Because like the problem with like these with super thin flat screens is has always been like motion clarity, which is why you bump up the refresh rate, because like especially if you're playing competitive games, those things have to look smoother. Yeah.
So what do you think about the 5090 given these updated rumors now?
So based on like what
they've rolled back the performance from what 70% they said versus the 4090, like a 70s.
I think they might be conservative. Like, I think because there's no competition, I wouldn't put it past. And like, it's not like it's like a dirty tactic or anything, but like to keep the costs and the profit margins within reason, because this is going to be a more complex GPU, right? Like whenever the top 5090, 4090, 3090, even like top Radeon launches, right? That's the R&D hit a certain point, they produce the chip, that's the flagship, and there's like all that cost to get to that point is like, all right, here it is, and that's the flagship, and it costs so much to produce, so it's always going to be expensive regardless of what it is, just based on what it takes to make these sort of things, the flagships anyway. So I think if NVIDIA, if there's no competition, as we discussed last week, if they say, oh, well, it'll be 50% more powerful than the 4090, that's going to be our target. We could easily, if we unlock everything or go all out, it could be 70% or 80%, but we're going to just scale it back. Like if they decide to scale it back, wouldn't surprise me. And especially now, if they're just not going to go 512-bit for the memory bus, if they're going to keep it conservative, but they're also going to not use the full GDDR7 speed. They're going to use 28 gigabits per second instead of the 32-bit that everybody knows is what GDDR7 is targeting, right? The latest leak from the what's his name? Yeah, Copite7 Kimi, who's a known and established NVIDIA leaker. He usually spot on with what he says, and he doesn't like speculate. He says XXX, and he said that it's going to be the same sort of like memory configuration as the existing GPUs, but the GDDR7 will be 28 gigabits per second.
Yeah,
which is still like 33% faster.
That's where I would put it.
Yeah, but it's like conservative, right? And that's kind of like what a generational leap would be.
Yeah,
it's about 30 to 50%. And if that's what it is, maybe not as exciting as it could be. But at the end of the day,
I mean, still 30 to 50% on top of the 4090 is like, goddamn.
Yeah, like what would be exciting is if they could do that, but then also like drop the price.
That would be nice. That would be nice. We got to move along because we're getting strapped for time, and we still got plenty of stories to get through. I just want to quickly go to YouTuber Jerry Rig Everything, which is one of my favorite tech tubers out there. He is known for doing durability tests, typically on the new smartphone. Sorry, he tests the glass. Well, glass as he likes to call it in quotation marks. Yeah, test the durability, rips apart stuff like the Apple Vision Pro, and it's really difficult to watch sometimes but I can't stop watching it because
because it's like when somebody like just destroys something that's brand new just to test it, like, you know what I mean? It's
and he's like scraping metal on the side, and he's like down the side of like the Apple Vision Pro, and I'm sitting there going, oh my god, don't stop this, stop what you're doing. But that's what he does. And I love it. I think he's one of the best tech guys out there on YouTube. Anyway, he decided to take his durability methods and test the Cybertruck's bulletproof exterior that Tesla is claiming is bulletproof. So he tested it with a 9mm handgun with a 115 grain full metal jacket bullet. I don't know what that is. I live in Australia, so we don't.
All these things should be illegal.
all of these, I don't think you can get here. Or you definitely can't get a
50 cal
AR 5.56mm round. And the last one, you for sure, like, you would get swatted here if you had this in your house. A 50 caliber sniper rifle round.
The 50 cal, like the image in your article and like the thumbnail for his video, like that is just a ludicrous gun.
You have to lay down to use it.
Yeah, like it shouldn't be even accessible to the public.
I don't know.
I mean, it's less a gun than it is like a rocket launcher, really.
Yeah, it's not like Modern Warfare 2 where you, like, I was running around with that thing just like quick scoping people. You can't do that in real life. You would get knocked on your ass if you fired that standing up. Like, if you look at the video and go to where he does shoot it, the ground around him moves. It's
it's insane.
Like the vibration, it just moves all the snow on the ground. It's like zzz. It looks like one of those like you know, those like people that anyway, I was going to say it's like a, you know, the shake thing. Yeah, and it's like all the sand moves back to where it was.
Yeah, it's like a magnetic thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So he tested 9mm bulletproof, works perfectly fine. However, it doesn't work if you shoot the same spot twice. It did crack the metal, so more like bullet resistant than bulletproof. It stopped at 22, a 22 round. The AR 5.56 went straight through like butter. But it didn't go through all the way. It actually, the plastic stopped like on the interior of the Cybertruck, stopped it. And yeah, the 50 cal, honestly, it blew up.
I mean, what chance did it have?
Huh?
like it'll be like if it stopped a 50 cal bullet, then you'd be like, well, the 50 cal gun is weak.
I mean, yeah, that's what I actually looked up. What a 50? Because after he fired that, I'm like, what is this weapon for? Like, honestly, what is it for?
Yeah, well, we don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but basically these weapons exist for no reason.
I have an idea of why it's actually used for armor penetration. So
yeah,
that's like in a nutshell, that's what it's for. And yeah, so it did exactly as you would expect. Blew a hole probably the size of an acorn in the front though. I thought it was going to be much bigger, but the exit wound was much larger. But then again, I don't know anything about weapons exit
that's usually
wounds.
how ballistics work, is that the exit wound is like where the horror show.
Right.
Because like where a bullet goes in is like it's usually like if it's like a clean shot, as they say, then it is just the size of the bullet because of the speed and the thing. But it's like as soon as it impacts with something and starts breaking apart is when you get like the real damage. That's the damage. Like if you get like, it's like, you know, when you watch like an action movie and it's like, oh, it's like clean through like the bullet, right? Then you're usually a lot better off if it's you know, somebody gets shot in the arm, whatever, and it's just like it goes straight through, and they're like, oh yeah, the bullet wound, it's like straight through, so you'll be okay or whatever.
Yeah,
like that's happened in movies and TV shows because of you know, because it didn't hit bone or whatever, and then cause all sorts of like crazy damage.
Yeah, right.
That's where the bad stuff happens.
That makes sense. Yeah, so the Cybertruck, there's actually a common misconception according to Jerry. John, I can see an error in my article that I need to fix. Jerry. Yeah, I need to fix that. He says there's a common misconception that the Cybertruck's windows are bulletproof, and if you can remember back to like the absolute fail that Tesla had and Elon Musk had on stage when they threw that like metal ball against the thing, that was a part of the original concept designs for the Cybertruck, but the one that actually came to market definitely doesn't have bulletproof windows. So if you're listening to this and thinking about shooting your windows to test them, don't. They're not thick enough, not at all. So I suppose Tesla's claims that the Cybertruck is bulletproof.
I mean, it's true though,
it's
right?
true, but it's
that's to a point.
Bit vague. Like it's bulletproof for 9mm, but if you're in the US, any other weapon really that's faster than a 9mm or a 22 will create a hole in your exterior. Let's quickly jump over to solar panels for your eyes. So yes, that's real. And also shout outs to the University of New South Wales, Australia, for sending me this article. This was very cool. I thought it was, I don't want to highlight something from home base, I suppose, but also I just couldn't really understand what was going on at first. I'm like, why are you putting solar panels on your eyeballs?
Yeah, so these are like ocular implants, right?
Essentially, yes. So the researchers are trying to cure two diseases that degrade. So hold on, let me try and paint the picture for this first. So the team is concentrating its efforts on neuroprosthetic technology, so which is designed for people with damaged photoreceptors, which are the specialized cells within the retina that absorb light and convert it into electrical signals that are then sent to our visual cortex in our brain. So then that helps, like, it actually produces the image. So people with these two diseases, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce either of them. Oh wait, no, I can do the second one. Age-related macular degeneration, or AMD for short.
Retinitis pigmentosa.
There we go. People with those are suffering from image like degrading image register. Hold on, I'm choking up here because this is not my lane at all. Researchers
Basically, it's a degenerative just means that like their eyesight gets worse over time.
for
like
sure.
It's not going to improve.
Yeah, it's going down.
Worse and worse.
So what the team decided to do is that they created this implant and stacked solar cells on top of each other. So as light is going through the solar cells, it is then going to a processor that is then creating an electrical signal that is then sent into the brain through the cells that are responsible for this image registering, and then it stimulates the neurons that produce the images. So it's essentially they're getting their eyeballs jump started to create images, because the cells that were originally there to do that naturally are dying. So they want to put an implant in, and lights will come through, electrical signal, neurons, bam, image happens. That's a pretty rudimentary way of thinking about it. You can go to my article if you want to learn more about it.
That I saw was that you basically, so like the solar cells are so small they actually need to wear like glasses or something to or goggles to be able to like recharge. Yes.
So what is unfortunate, and because this tech is still in the proof of concept stage, at the moment they're only able to achieve like a low resolution black and white image, and also, which this kind of sucks, but again, this is still at proof of concept stage, sunlight alone might not be enough to work with these solar cells, because
you put like a magnifying glass in there to like concentrate the light.
That's where the goggles come in. So one of the researchers say people may have to wear some sort of goggles or smart glasses that work in tandem with the solar cells that are able to amplify the sun signal into the required intensity needed to reliably stimulate neurons in the eye. So Gen 1 of this, what was that, sorry?
I was saying this is like cool because this is like a step towards like being able to have like
cyborgs,
like a cybernetic implants, like
cyberpunk,
replace your eye, like like cyberpunk, you go to the Ripperdoc and get your new eye.
Yeah.
And then like when it's like charging, like just like these like you put on, like charging shades.
Yeah.
And it just like starts charging.
It's like that in the Ripperdoc where one of them you sit down and he's got like multiple lenses and he's like ding 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 ding, and it's like it goes down into like this point and then he's like zzz, he's like doing surgery but he's just sitting there and he's like covered in grease. It's like this is so cool. The first one of that. Yeah, but they
and this would be like the cheap one, right? Like Gen 1. You'd be like in the far future if you got one of these ones. Like, hey man, he's only got Gen 1 eyes.
Yeah, loser. So I thought that was pretty cool, highlighting home research from Homebase over here in Australia. It's still proof of concept, so we can't really expect these to be going to anywhere for a while. They need to get the image quality and obviously the efficiency of the solar cells, because right now they're just doing their testing with like a laser, like they're shooting the solar cells with a laser, and then that's generating the electrical signal, and they can see from there all their math that it will work on people, but first animal trials, etc. Let's quickly jump over to SpaceX running its last major test before its most anticipated event of the year. If you've been paying attention or tuning into the show, Starship is something that I've been talking about for quite some time. This in 2 days. So by the time that this episode comes out, Starship could already be up and exploded once more. Let's hope not.
Let's do like 2 versions, like do one where it's exploded, one where it hasn't.
I mean, next week's episode we will be discussing it regardless, so let's hope by the time that you're hearing this it did reach orbit. SpaceX seems pretty damn confident that they're going to do it this time. They've made some notable changes to the design of Starship after looking at all the problems of the first two, which did end in explosions. Again, though, this is something that is necessary for, I mean, they're pushing the envelope of space travel. So this is the world's largest and most powerful rocket. They've made notable changes to the water deluge system, which is the last test that they will conduct before the third orbital test flight. And essentially the water deluge system is on the Starbase's launch pad and is designed to essentially contain the power of the rocket, because on the first flight test, the launch pad was just destroyed. Like, they didn't know what they were lighting on fire, because it was destroyed so bad that it took them months to build. And the Federal Aviation Administration is like, you need to do something. Like, you can't have rocks flying. Like, I did stories on people like that set up cameras on next to vans, and rocks were just like rocks that if you got hit by them, you would have died. Like, it was crazy. So they've set that up. They've done the test, and that's all good. They've also made changes to the Starship vehicle to stop fires, which caused the last two explosions. Essentially fires on the sides of the rocket going into different compartments, resulting in like communication severing and SpaceX having to go beep and abort, because the rocket has explosives on it, just in case an event like that takes place where they can't actually control it anymore. They got to what did they call it? They said it was a rapid disassembly or something like that, which was really funny, which is a fun way of saying we blew it up.
Exploded.
Yeah. Some changes and tweaks to the engines to reduce impurities, etc, etc. And the only thing that they're really waiting for now is every launch for Starship, they need to get a license from the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and after every launch, the FAA conducts an investigation into what went, what happens. The changes on Starship is essentially, you know, dotting like just a regulator coming in.
Just
Elon hates him. He hates him. He's not a fan of regulation. He likes to move fast and break stuff, but you know, I'm here for someone.
I understand it, but like at the same time, you gotta have some,
you know, not death. That would be good
when it comes to like environmental protection, stuff like that. Like, you gotta have someone's got to come in. It can't just be that bloke just signing off on everything. He's like, yeah, launch it. Like, what's going to happen? A lot can happen. But however, SpaceX said that they have already set a date of March 14th for the launch. So that leads the public to believe that the FAA is on the verge of granting SpaceX a launch license. So the FAA essentially comes in and goes, here's a checklist, get it all done, and then we'll give you another license. And they do that every single time. So they must be nearing the end of that checklist, which is like changes to the deluge system, Starship, etc, etc. So that's something to look out for in the next couple days. Should probably cover the NVIDIA lawsuit, because we mentioned it in the intro.
Yes, let's do that. So NVIDIA getting sued by authors. It's a proposed class action lawsuit that was filed last Saturday in San Francisco federal court. I have another error in my article there. God, I'm just not doing well here. I spelled NVIDIA wrong. NVIDIA has been accused of stealing 3 books, which the lawsuit names, to train their AI model Nemo. So Nemo is designed to simulate ordinary written language. The 3 authors, I don't think they were specifically named, or I didn't include them in my article, but the books are a 2008 novel Ghost Walk, Naismian's 2019 novel Like a Love Story, and Onan's 2007 novella Last Night at the Lobster. So if you know anything about AI, they're all data sets, right? We need to be trained. They need for them to get a chat GPT. It needs to be trained on Wikipedia pages. It needs to be trained on almost anything that's on the internet, really. And what we're starting to see, and this is hardly the first lawsuit, is the original creators of that content coming out against companies such as OpenAI and now NVIDIA with copyright lawsuits saying that they've their content has been stolen to steal their to train their generative AI platforms.
Yeah. Well,
this is hardly surprising, really.
The suspect bit is like, you know, they apparently it was trained with 200,000 books, and you wrote that, but they removed the data set, which is all the books, in October 2023 due to copyright infringement claims. So, see, the problem with this sort of stuff is like, well, it's already been trained, so it's like, oh, well, it's like, all right, yeah, we won't use that image anymore or that piece of work, but it's already been done. Like, it's already been trained using it. So, like, what are you on about?
Yeah, it's already been stolen. It's just returned, which is really, it is kind of funny, but I also feel terrible for the authors at the same time. And I kind of agree with them. So the lawsuit claims that NVIDIA's decision to remove the dataset is an admission of guilt. I think that's pretty interesting. I think that's it's a nice way to come about it.
It's like yes and no, but like it's like, but like we're finding that with like, you know, like Getty Images like suing and stuff like that, and like there it's still sort of like a wild west of like what have these existing models been trained on, because there's no way to like really tell.
Yeah, it is like this is still quite fresh. We'll keep you updated because any NVIDIA news is likely worth talking about, and it's also an indicator of where this AI market is going. This will hardly be the last copyright lawsuit. I don't know if they're gonna be able to, you know, win this. Maybe they win. Maybe this is just like a speeding fine for NVIDIA, or maybe it's set to
like it's like settling. Like, you know, there'll be what sort of thing. It'll be settled out of court, or there'll be some sort of agreement. Like, I don't think it's gonna. Well, it
needs to set a precedent though, because they can't keep just taking other people's content and training it, and then being like, "Oh, well, it's don't worry about it. We don't use it anymore."
Like, oh, your book. Don't worry, we've taken your book out, but like, hundreds of thousands of others are still in there.
So there needs to be some kind of lawsuit that does set a precedent for companies. Like maybe they purchase content from the original creators. I don't know.
This is like knowingly, right? Like, let's say flashback like X amount of years, whatever it is, and you're part of a team developing generative AI that can, like just an image generator, right? It's like you put in the text and it'll give you this image, and you can emulate different styles and blah blah blah, and photography, etc. And then you're knowingly feeding it photos from this source, this artist, this artwork. Like, you know that what you do, like essentially what you're doing is you're feeding it copyrighted material, right? Like there's no universe where the generative AI models and stuff like that, people feeding it the data sets and whatever, like it's not like they're innocent to say like, oh well, we didn't know it was, or you know, that's crap, my bad, whatever. It's like
it's a question of whether did you make the content that is within the data set, or did you get it from somewhere else?
Yeah, and you're not going to be able to like have like an advanced image generator or like a good one without copyrighted material, right? Like,
of course,
using the crappy royalty-free images that are out there. Like, how many? Like, there's not that many, and you're just going to be, to get the best stuff, you're going to have to feed it the best stuff.
It's dicey, but I think there's like a precedent will need to be set at some stage or another, because like this is essentially, I don't know if it's going to happen with I'm just thinking ahead in the future now with games though. Like, what if an AI model, maybe not the language models like the LLMs, but there is a more advanced version where you can feed it game files of retro games, and then it just spits out whatever type of game.
Or even like a map, right? Let's just say, like, you know, like AI powered map generators that are based on,
Yeah.
like for a first person shooter, it's like, here's the best 500 maps, or like all the maps ranked in terms of popularity for every FPS or every Call of Duty game for the past 20 years. Now we're going to use AI and all this like heat map data or whatever. And, you know, like if it's the same company using their own data, all right, but let's say it's another company using all that data to create like new maps, and it just spits out these maps that are just a hybrid of that. Like like then it becomes a gray area, because it's like, well, is a map protected by a layout, protected by copyright? Like, what is?
I think Rust from MW2 has to be
like a mechanic, like, you know, sure, like you can attack, like, you know, like there's elements in games that are just the same no matter what game it is. So like it becomes a gray area of like what's like, you know, if it's obvious that like this is this character from The Legend of Zelda, because it's like, oh well, you know, like all the recent Power World stuff, it's like, oh, which is disproven, but it's like, oh, this looks like a Pokemon, or this looks like this specific thing, then you can draw a parallel. But if it's just like a feeling, like, oh, this kind of feels like this game, then it's impossible.
That is impossible. Yeah, it is going to be interesting, because I think this is kind of like the Wild West right now, and no one really cares that the original creators, like artists and all that, are getting ripped off through these generative tools, AI powered generative tools. Is because it's not, those artists aren't making enough money, or the right companies that are like worth $100 million, or like Activision isn't getting ripped off, so no one hears about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just your Joe Blow that makes, not to call these authors Joe Blows, like they've got a book. I love reading, and I've always wanted to write a book, but them screaming from the rooftops is nothing compared to like a company such as like Adobe stock getting ripped off. Like if Adobe came out and
Getty Images, like when they came out and said, hey, you're using our images, right?
Yeah.
It's like we pay photographers big money for like the best photos or whatever it is, and then they get a share, and then we sell them. You know, like there's a whole market, and you can't just buy a license, whatever, and just then download 50 million of our images and then train your AI to be able to generate similar images. Like that was a precedent. Like I think that set one.
Yeah, I agree.
They won that, and so now like they've partnered with certain AI companies, like, and that's what it's just going to end up being. But the problem is that there's going to be so many that fall through the cracks. Yeah, like indie artists or
small time authors.
Small time. Yeah, like it's just there's no way to.
It's rough. It is rough. I feel for the artists out there that and even game developers, like the artistic game developers, like the ones doing all the drawing and stuff like that. I feel like their jobs are going to be threatened as the development for these AI models just continues and gets more and more sophisticated, more advanced. The tweaking that you can do, the just the subtle detail changes right now. Like if you use, like, I don't know, Microsoft's Copilot to make an image, and you ask it to even like make the image in 1200 by 675 or something like that, it doesn't do it. It's like, nah. I mean, I'll make the image for you and include all the things that you requested, but the resolution, no thanks. No, it's just 1024 by 1024 every single time. But like that's going to change within like a week. Like we were talking about it only a couple of episodes ago, like the Will Smith eating spaghetti thing, and now we're like at the stage where you're looking at like drone footage, and you're like, is that actually drone footage, or is that?
We have to like look closely to try and spot little weird glitches. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's gonna like it's moved so damn fast, and the little guy is gonna definitely get left behind. So, in a weird way, I hope like Adobe stock or some big dog out there, and I think it's gonna be big in games as well, because this is essentially putting procedural generation in the hands of the public.
But it's like similar, like it's all very similar. How it works anyway, like procedural generation, which is the more algorithm based or whatever it is. But it's all just based on like similar concepts. Like the thing with generative AI is that because the data set can be so much bigger,
Yeah.
the result is just so much more impressive.
Yeah, you wait till they're ripping off Doom assets and other assets from games, and there's just going to be an amalgamation in this one AI. Like, it's going to be gross. What's going to happen? But the gamers are going to do it. Like, it's going to essentially be like Unreal. Like, what if Unreal Engine had like an AI model that is what I'm talking about, where it contains it's open source, people can put in assets from whatever games that they want, and then you can just smack that into Unreal Engine 5, and then then people will start to discover these are assets from like Nintendo's game, these are assets from, but now they're lost in the data set. And what if
how it's trained, and like who knows?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the NVIDIA thing. Oh, okay, we'll just delete it. But the model has learned how to use this now. Okay, we'll just slightly change it, and bam, it's now different. It's a new created asset. It's now not Nintendo's anymore. This is going to happen in gaming, and I kind of like am sitting back with popcorn at this point, because it's like the copyright infringement lawsuits are going to fly.
Yeah, but the thing with games, like there's already been like some AI that have created like, like an AI that's trained on a specific style of game to actually just make like a basic like game, or like, like a 5-second Mario moving from left to right of the screen. And it's pretty shoddy, like in terms of what it can do now. So like it's the limitations of this sort of stuff is still not at the point where like, an AI can create images, and when you're seeing like with video, but it's still, I mean, obviously it's advancing so quickly, but the point where it could actually create like a full level or a full gaming experience is still a long way off.
How many years do you think?
5 years.
I was going to say 5 as well. Yeah. I was going to say 5. We should probably.
We're running out of time. One story that was skipped last week.
Oh yeah.
That we almost skipped this week. That was in the headline. Very quick one, because we're on PC gaming. Good news for higher resolution displays.
Yes.
So 1440p is slowly climbing up in popularity. The latest Steam hardware results show that 18.99% of all users primary displays, active users on Steam, which we equated to be about 130 million at least last week, are using 1440p displays as their primary display. It grew by close to 3% in February. So it's only a matter of time before it surpasses 20%.
Wow.
So obviously the dominant display is 1080p, but that's now dropped to below 60% for primary displays. And, if you want to talk about, 8K, like here's another thing to show you that 8K is a long way
Go
off.
on.
Because there's only 4% of Steam users are using 4K or an ultra-wide display.
Where's 8K, dude? It's probably not
8K
even
like
listed.
It's not listed, right? So like you're talking about like 4K is only at 4% of gaming. PC gamers running Steam.
Yeah. 4K.
So 1440p will I think will in the next couple of years will grow dramatically. I think it'll hit 20, maybe even 30% by the end of the year.
Yeah, especially with the
maybe like
QD
it'll be in the
OLEDs.
20s. Yeah, it'll be in the 20s by the end of the year.
Yes.
People that are upgrading now will be getting 1440p displays because they're way more affordable.
Yeah, and with the OLEDs, they look ridiculous as well. Like there was a review that I just put up before of MSI's new 1440p 360 hertz QD OLED. It is like, if you're into competitive gaming, Overwatch, Apex Legends, Call of Duty, League of Legends, any of those competitive titles where you want high refresh rates, that is the monitor with those specs, not necessarily from MSI, but QD OLED, 1440p, 360 hertz.
It's a sweet spot.
That is the chef's kiss for competitive gaming. I personally prefer the 4K 240 hertz. I don't need 360. But I also like 32 inches more than 27 inches. I think that because I flex between work. But these the QD OLED monitors reducing coming down, we're only going to see more gamers adopting 1440p now, especially with the new graphics cards like the 4070 and those ones.
The 4070 Super. That's like that price range, which is now like growing in popularity. It's like so like the 1440p displays, like the market share or whatever you call it, is growing, like reflects like the GPUs that are growing, which is that sort of like mid-range. You know, things that are 3070 or more powerful, which are like, you know, decent GPUs that were designed for 1440p, right? They've got the horsepower, the bandwidth, and even now with like DLSS looks better. Like upscaling technology, which is now the norm, right? Like at 1440p, that's where DLSS looks great. At 4K, it's basically, you turn it on regardless at 4K because
what are you doing?
The difference is negligible, free performance. But it is really good at 1440p, and that's what sets it apart from AMD's FSR or Intel XeSS, is that DLSS looks better at that sort of lower resolutions like 1440p and even to an extent 1080p, but depending on the case, right? But that's like, you know, that's like why it's the sweet spot. That's why it's growing. So like 1440p displays probably be, I'd give it like another year or two maximum where it's the majority of.
I can see by the end of the year it could be almost 50, and of course it's not 50-50 because there's other resolutions, but like almost the same as 1080p. End of the year, maybe start of next year.
I think it'll take longer than that, but it'll be close to. I think if we can get to about 30% by next year, sometime next year, then it's basically.
Well, what's it doing per month? 3%?
No, that's the biggest growth that it's shown in a month.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like 3% every month. I was like, God damn.
There's a whole bunch of new displays that launched and a whole bunch that are selling really well as well. 1440p displays. So it shows that like that's where people are buying.
Yeah. No.
It just takes, because you look at about millions and millions, tens of millions of gamers. They're not all just going to rush out and buy a display tomorrow. But the shift is happening, basically. You
should, if you are listening and you are thinking about QD OLED and 1440p and you're at 1080p, do it. I'm telling you. But make sure you got the right graphics card and you can, you know, take full advantage of your... Like, don't be a noob with it. But if you're thinking about pulling the trigger, pull it. It's worth it. Trust me. Go read the review. Is that all we had for this week? We have gone over time as well.
Yeah, let's wrap her up.
As always, thank you very much for listening. Any of the stories that we have talked about in this week's episode are in the description below. If you're listening to the audio, please go head over to the YouTube. And you can see all of the incredible photos from Samsung's S24. Like, comment, and subscribe. Do your thing. We'll be back next week with an equally as jam-packed episode. Do you have anything to sign off with, good sir?
Wall-to-wall goodness next week. No. Stay tuned next week.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. See ya.